Hi, friends. We at GLC would like to take a quick moment to thank you for watching our programs on this platform, and we'd like to ask you for a little favor. Would you please go beneath this video and click the subscribe button? Did you know that by simply subscribing to the GLC YouTube channel, you can help us financially support the programs on this platform? You'll need to be signed into YouTube beforehand. But if not, simply click the subscribe button and YouTube will automatically walk you through the steps to sign in or to create an account. By taking these simple steps, you will not only ensure that you continue to receive our unique programming and gain instant access to the hundreds of videos we post, but more importantly, you'll also be telling YouTube that GLC's content is worth watching and promoting. Likewise, if you enjoyed a specific program, please click the thumbs up button below, which also helps inform YouTube that this is a program worth recommending. Finally, once you have logged in and subscribed, please click the notification bell below in order to receive announcements when we post new content. As usual, feel free to post your questions and comments in the comments section below. We always love hearing from our friends and viewers. Again, thank you for watching and supporting God's Learning Channel. We couldn't spread the message of the gospel without you. Be blessed, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Light of the Southwest on God's Learning Channel. I'm your host, Eric Espatia, and today we are honored to welcome an extraordinary guest, Rabbi Ira Brawer of Shalom Boca in Boca Raton, Florida. Rabbi Brawer's life is a powerful redemption story. Raised in New York, he experienced his bar mitzvah, but later turned away from faith, becoming an atheist and ultimately involved in drug dealing. Woo! Yet through a series of divine encounters and God's grace, the Lord drew him back, where he came to know Yeshua as the Messiah. For more than 30 years, Rabbi Brawer has served as a senior rabbi of Shalom Boca, leading a vibrant Messianic Jewish community. He shares his journey in his book, An Atheist, a Drug Dealer, and a Rabbi, and his testimony is also available on YouTube. Please join me in welcoming our guest today. Welcome, Rabbi Ira. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Eric. It's great to be with you.
It's so good to have you here. I was so thankful to get your book, and I swallowed it up in like 2 days. It's a really good read. I loved it, and there were parts of the book that just super encouraged me. And I think that's the point, that a lot of our testimonies, we are all going through similar struggles, no matter where we are. And your story was amazing.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and pretty easy read, right?
Yeah.
I wanted it that way, and people have read it. You know, sometimes they say, "Yeah, I read it in 2 hours or 4 hours or whatever." Okay, great. It was so. Appreciate your reading it, and yeah.
Yeah, there was just so much amazing historical information about your family, and I think for many of us, I think we wish we had that rich heritage that we could reach in and sort of see. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came across all that information on your family and the rich history of the rabbinic?
Wow. So some of that information has been known in my family for since I was growing up, like on my mom's side and their escape from Berlin. And that whole supernatural meeting up in Paris, my grandfather. So my grandparents, my mom and her sister were from Berlin, Germany, in the 20s and 30s. And then when things started getting bad, when they lived under Hitler for, I think it was about 4 years, from 1933, Hitler came to power. 1937, they were able to escape. But they first went on a trip to Krakow to say goodbye to my grandfather's family that lived there. They forgot their visas to come to the States. My grandfather had a sister that lived in the Bronx who sponsored them, because back then you couldn't just come into the States. You had to have a sponsor and so on. And it's a miraculous story. So he sends my mom who was 15 at the time, her sister, who was 11, and my grandmother from Krakow back to Germany, back to Berlin. And they're gonna meet up in Paris because they had a boat ticket there. And so my mom and grandma, they go back to Berlin. They were very scared because they were, my grandfather was an accountant and someone had cheated and blamed him. And it was a whole thing. And anyway, so they managed to leave Berlin, get to Paris. And it happened to be on Yom Kippur that my grandfather found them that night.
Wow.
Yom Kippur. They go to synagogue to thank God. And, that's that story. It's one of several.
That was an amazing story. It's almost nail biting because you get it's just like again when you read, it's like just a fun adventure. It wasn't fun. It was scary. I was reading it and I felt like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? That's why I couldn't put the book down. I had to keep reading. And I remember you mentioned, was it one of your grandparents, your grandfather? One was a Ritchie boy. Who was one?
That was my dad.
That was your father. Okay.
That was my dad. Yeah. So for those that don't know, Ritchie boys were a unit during World War II, American soldiers that were this colonel, I think he was, I don't remember his name, but had come up with this idea because there were so many German, Austrian, Jewish young men that had emigrated in the 1930s to escape Nazi Germany. And now the U.S. is in World War II, 1941, of course. And so he started a camp it was actually called Camp Ritchie. That's why they're called Ritchie Boys, recruiting German and Austrian and some other languages as well, but mostly German and Austrian Jewish young men to be trained in intelligence gathering, in interpretation, translation, and so on. And then once they were trained, they were assigned to various combat units throughout Europe during the war. So my dad was a little late in it. His training was in 1944. It's interesting because that piece of information I didn't know till just a couple of years before I wrote the book. A cousin had come across this whole idea of the Ritchie Boys. I never knew about it. All I knew when I was growing up, my dad was an interpreter, a translator for German prisoners of war. And he didn't talk about it, as typical for that generation. Didn't talk much about it. And of course, now I wish I had asked him more questions. But come to find out that he served in there, and this cousin actually got hold of his service record for his time at the camp they're training, and then he was assigned a combat unit. They only saw, I think, one or two actual combats. But there's documentaries about the Ritchie Boys and books, several of them that when were captured were executed by the Germans when it was found out that they were Jews. And so my dad served in that capacity.
Wow. Again, I, like I said at the beginning, it is such a rich history that you have, and the book does such a good job bringing us into that world and just allowing us to see the heritage that you bring and your family brings. And thank you for sharing that.
Sure. One other I just mentioned that might be interesting. So another one that I really found out pretty recently from some family members, that cousins in Israel, told me about another cousin that I'd never met in Israel who did a genealogy. This is on my mom's side. So what I just shared with you was my dad's. Mom's side, the ones that escaped Berlin, but going back several generations to the 1600s, I had an ancestor that was chief rabbi of Prague during that era of 1500, and then his grandson, I believe, also became chief rabbis. And so my wife and I had an opportunity to go a couple of years ago. It was actually about a month before the October 7th, 2023, we spent several days in Prague, and we went to one of the museums, and sure enough, there was my, I don't know, great grandfather's name listed, and his son as well as in the line of chief rabbi. So that was kind of cool, and put that in the book as well.
Very, very cool. That's awesome. I loved it. It was so good. And after sort of reading that, you really see like the redemptive story that Hashem had on your life, even when you were off in college, sowing the wild oats, as they say. But but you had a calling that was much deeper, and you just didn't understand that yet. And I was hoping maybe can you share? I guess after bar mitzvah, you were like, okay, I'm done. I kind of fulfilled the religious expectations put on a young Jewish boy in New York, and then you went off to college. Share a little bit about that.
Sure. So I grew up in New York, and my parents sent me to yeshiva from first grade through 8th grade. And I was an Orthodox yeshiva, also attended an Orthodox shul, so learned Hebrew, Torah, some Talmud, and Jewish history, and so forth. And I never had the idea that I would ever one day become a rabbi. That was not on my radar. But I got two kind of hints that I should have maybe paid attention to. One was my grandmother, my mom's mom, the one that escaped Germany, the one whose ancestry was the chief rabbi at Prague and so on. She told me that, we come from a long line of rabbis. And I was like, yeah, sure. There was kind of a joke in the family. Of course, how many decades later, I come to find out, actually, it was true. And then my uncle, who was not religious at all, this is my dad's brother-in-law, one day, I was probably about 10 or 11 years old. He said, you're going to be a rabbi one day. And I went, no, I don't think so. And so fast forward, as you said, left Judaism pretty much after my bar mitzvah, went off to college, got involved with, this is in the late 1960s, got involved with the anti-war movement, got involved with, smoking dope and drinking and the party life. And so on. And I was at the University of Wisconsin and took a semester off, which ended up being about 20 years, and went out to Colorado. And that was like the mecca for that lifestyle that I'd started in Wisconsin, and fell in love with the mountains, and also fell in love with smoking dope and the hippie movement and lifestyle and all that. And so that was my life for a number of years, and married to my first wife, and we had 2 kids, both of us basically hippies. And that did not end so well, except 2 wonderful kids came out of that marriage. And the oldest one now is 51, and she's had 4 children, 4 my oldest grandkids, and my son from that marriage is going to be 50 in a couple months. And then married my second wife, Gloria, who still, thank God, been married to today, 43 years and counting. And we have 3 of our own. But as far as my testimony, my faith, so when Gloria and I got married, she was a backslidden Baptist, raised Southern Baptist, Mississippi, and I'm this backslidden Jew from New York, you might say. And we hit it off through partying and so on. And she, through a series of events, ended up actually going through alcohol and drug treatment. And I participated in that. So we kind of got clean, and she got involved with the AA 12-step. And I got involved with Al-Anon, God as you understand him. And I was at that point pretty much, I would say, atheist. But God as you understand him. So, they say, well, you can believe in anything. You can believe in the tree. And all right, I can believe in the tree.
Yeah. I love that part of the book. It was sort of this intervention that you're kind of the enabler for Gloria, and that you also need treatment yourself and you need to be in this program, but they asked you, can you believe in something outside of yourself? It's maybe part of this step system. And then I love how the counselor asked you, could you believe in this tree out there? I don't know.
Exactly.
I'm imagining the conversation and you're like, yeah, I think I could believe in a tree. So tell us a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. So Gloria had gone to through an intervention of a friend who recognized her behavior. Now she would drink. We both drink, so I'm not saying I wasn't, but she would just react differently, right? So he recognized the behavior and so on in her. I was able to drink, and very few times I ever actually get drunk, although my drug of choice was more marijuana, cocaine, hash, and that kind of stuff. So anyway, she went off to treatment through the encouragement of this friend. And as long as, and we were not married yet at that time, but we were living together way before Yeshua was in the picture. And obviously, and so she asked me if I'd come for family week. I said, sure. So I went for family week. And that's where you meet with the counselor and, where are you with your, well, I like getting high. And well, if this is going to work, you're going to have to refrain as well in order to support her. And I said, all right, I can do that. And what about the God thing? And I said, well, I don't believe in God. Well, can you believe in something other than yourself, like that tree? And she pointed out the window. And I said, yeah, I guess I can believe in a tree. And so that was kind of, I would say, a step that God used in my journey to faith.
Yeah. I think at one point, Gloria comes home and she says she's born again, and she has this excitement welling up in her. And you at that point are faced with, I think, what every Jewish person who has ever thought about Christianity, or even, do I even open the New Testament? You're faced with a struggle. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So we got married 1982, and one of the conditions of our wedding, I asked a friend of ours who was a Unitarian pastor, and I said, would you marry us under one condition? What's the condition? Well, I don't want God mentioned in the wedding. And being a good Unitarian minister, he said, oh yeah, that's not a problem. Sure. Okay, so we got married, but we were, in AA and now, and I was going down and on. So there was no alcohol or drugs now in our lives. And Gloria started going to church, Baptist church. That's how she was raised. And one of the steps in AA is improve your conscious contact with your higher power. For her, that was going to back to church. So she started going. We got married. About 6 months later, she comes in the house one day and announces that she was born again. She'd accepted Jesus as her Lord. And I thought, okay, does that mean we have to get a divorce? I don't know. I'm Jewish. And I said, I'm Jewish, don't bother me with that stuff. I wasn't practicing any of my Jewishness, but it was convenient to say, I'm Jewish, just don't believe in Jesus, end of story, right?
Right.
And anyway, so she started pounding me over the head with the Bible, not literally, but close to it, leaving tracts around the house and things like that. And, I wasn't interested. And one day, we were standing by the stove, and we had a gas oven, and the flame kind of was up a little high. And she said, Ira Brawer, if you don't believe Jesus, if you don't accept Jesus, you're going to burn in hell, and while me and the kids are going to be in heaven. I said, oh, man, you're nuts. You're really crazy. And anyway, so I had the two little kids from the first marriage that we'd have on weekends, and they were like 5 and 3, 6 and 4, something like that. And she said she wanted to start taking them to church. And I said, well, I don't think so, because my first wife and we had agreed, because she was raised Catholic but was not practicing either. but we had agreed that we wouldn't impose either one of our religions on the kids and let them grow up and decide for themselves. Very smart, right? And
It's
so
common.
Gloria,
It's common.
what's that?
I said that's probably a pretty common thing.
Yeah, I think so. I'm looking back on it, it's pretty silly that they would, they need to be taught something, right? They're going to learn something along the way, either from parents or from the world. But in any case, so Gloria had a very smart response. She said, well, how are they going to know about God, whether what to believe or not, unless they know about God? And I thought, okay. So she started taking them to church. And back then I was a marathon runner. So Sunday morning was my long run. So she'd take them to church and I go on my long run. And then they would ask her, how come we are going to church and Dad doesn't have to go? Well, Dad's Jewish. Jews don't believe in Jesus. And she didn't know what to answer. But then when they asked her the second time, she said, well, why don't you ask him yourself? So they come to me, Dad, how come we have to go to church and you don't? And I'm thinking, how am I going to explain to these little ones, right? So I thought, you know what, by the way, I was in the real estate business at that time and I had my own real estate company. And so we were living in Estes Park, Colorado, a small resort town up in the mountains. And I thought, well, maybe I'll go to church, maybe it'd be good for business. So make contacts, So I went and everybody was really nice to me. And I thought, okay, this could be cool. And then I got invited to a men's Bible study. And a young businessmen's Bible study.
Yes.
And I thought, all right, same thing, could be good for business, network, that kind of thing. So I went, started going, and it was the first time I'd opened the New Testament, and they were studying the book of John. Actually, they had just started the book of John and never read the New Testament. New Testament, as you know, is off limits to Jewish people. Don't know why. Well, I know why, because, that's the Christian Bible, not for Jews. So I thought, all right, well, I'm, here, I'll play along, see what happens. And so start with the book of John. And, this guy, Jesus, I knew he was Jewish, but I didn't realize how Jewish he actually was. Actually went to synagogue on Shabbat and he, observed the feasts and the holidays. And I'll go, and all his followers, they were all Jews. They lived in Israel. I knew some of that, but never thought about what it actually meant. And so as I'm getting more involved in reading it, it's intriguing to me. I know looking back, I could say God was, kind of reeling me in a little bit, putting little crumbs out for me, and started going to the church with my wife, with Gloria, and when the kids were with us, to take them and so on. And and then I thought, I got to read the Hebrew Bible too. And so I started, and people were giving me books, and tracts. And so one of the books was about Isaiah 53. Oh, wow. So I'm kind of fast forwarding a little bit, but so Isaiah 53. All right. So I read Isaiah 53 and I go, wow, that's pretty interesting. It sounds a lot like Jesus. And I thought, okay, well, if any of this is real, that's got to be about Jesus. And if that's real, then he's got to be the Messiah, if there's such a thing. And so I kind of had this I was in this intellectual pursuit, for evidence and so on. If it's real, I want to know for sure, not just blind faith, like what I was thinking so many Christians were. They're just blind faith. I would tell Gloria that, oh, you're just blind faith. And so little by little, after reading more and more and studying and looking into the evidences and, Josh McDowell and people like that, I thought, wow, there actually is a lot of evidence for the historicity and the reliability of the Bible. And then I started feeling, this Christian thing, my parents, my grandparents, they escaped Nazism and they were Christian, I thought, right. Something is just not right, the cross and all that. So, I need to start going back to synagogue maybe and reconnecting with my Jewishness. So around that time, we were going through a really difficult financial time. The business was not going good. I'd made some bad real estate decisions. Little did I know that God was using all of that, as he often does to draw me to himself. And I thought, I'll go back to synagogue. It was the high holidays were were coming up. But then didn't want to buy tickets because we couldn't really afford it. But what I failed to mention, a few months prior to this point, there was a gentleman, an elderly gentleman that came to the church. I didn't go. It was a Wednesday night. My wife went. His name was Eliezer Erbach. Some of your listeners may be familiar with him. He worked with an organization that was called American Board of Missions to the Jews, which is now called Chosen People. And he worked in Denver and had a ministry. He was himself a Holocaust survivor from Poland, had a long white beard, and spoke with a heavy accent. He came to the church one night and spoke, and Gloria went. She was all excited to meet another Jewish believer, or first one maybe that she'd ever met, having grown up in a small town in Mississippi. She was all, So she was all excited about meeting him and telling him about her Jewish husband that needs to come to faith, and maybe come home and do something to get him to believe. And he said, "What's his name? We'll play it for him." And so she gave him my name. He gave her his card. So fast forward a few months later, and I'm thinking, well, maybe I should go to synagogue, but I know they're going to charge. And what about that Messianic synagogue that the guy came to the church? So I asked her, I asked Gloria, do you still have his card? Eliezer, yeah. So I called him up and spoke to him, and they were having a Erev Yom Kippur service. So we went down that night, and it was the first time I'd met other Jewish believers. Men wearing kippahs and talits, and Jewish prayers, Kol Nidre, and all that. And I just felt like this was where I was to be. And actually, there was no invitation. I didn't talk to anyone afterwards, but I sort of got it that it all kind of fell into place. Atonement, Kippur, and so on. Yeah. And on the way home that night, I'm driving. Gloria, we had a friend with us. Gloria's they're talking back and forth. And I just had this encounter with the Spirit, with the Ruach, that moment. And I invited Yeshua into my heart. And that was the moment for me that went from my head to my heart. Wow. And that was October 1984. So a little over 41 years ago.
I love how the Yom Kippur date it creates this cyclical pattern throughout your family, even your history of this being a significant time frame. And he spoke to your heart that night. He saved your mom and your grandparents during that time frame as they're trying to get out of Germany and stuff. That's amazing.
Yep, a Yom Kippur story. 2 Yom Kippur stories.
So for Jewish people today who are, sort of told that if you look at the New Testament, or that you even begin to read anything about JC at all, I mean, you can lose your Jewishness. You're not Jewish anymore if you do that. And I'm sure you get asked that question a lot, or even told that you're not Jewish anymore because you believe in Yeshua. What do you say to anybody who might be Jewish watching this program right now about coming to understand Yeshua and still being it's completely Jewish to believe in the Jewish Messiah?
Yeah. Well, there's several layers to that question, of course. I think the most obvious one, the thing that I usually start out with, is what defines your Jewishness. See, Jewishness is an ethnicity, right? Mm-hmm. It's like you wouldn't say to a Chinese person that accepted Jesus, well, you're no longer Chinese. No, it's your ethnicity. So I'm Jewish because my parents were Jewish, and anyone else that's Jewish is Jewish because one or both parents were Jewish. Okay, so that's one question, or that's one part of the answer to the question. The other part is that there are Jews that are atheists, like I was. There are Jews that are Buddhists. There are Jews that believe in all kinds of New Age and whatever. They don't stop being Jewish. Why should, of all things, that I believe in a Jewish rabbi, whether he was the Messiah or not, maybe is a different question. but he was a Jewish rabbi, and he was accepted as such by the people of his day. They were never saying, "Oh, you're here to start a new religion, and you're no longer." No. Or none of his followers at that time were ever accused of no longer being Jewish. In fact, the whole controversy about that was in the first century is, what do we do with these Gentiles that are coming to faith in Jesus? Do they have to become Jews first? See how the things flipped around. So I would just say to that person, if that's someone that's listening now, is read the New Testament, because it is a Jewish book. All of the writers of the New Testament were Jews who were well versed, well steeped in the Tanakh, the Hebrew Scriptures, Jewish understanding, Jewish theology, Jewish eschatology, and so on. So
yeah. Perfect. No, that's such a good question. That's such a great answer. And I feel like in today, I mean, there are so many different sects of Judaism, Hasidics, Breslovs, and many of these have a teacher who they would even themselves say, our teacher was Messiah, right? Or is Messiah, or a Messiah type. And so it's, why are we any different? I mean,
absolutely. They're still within the Chabad world, ones that believe that, Menachem Schneerson's the rabbi, is the Messiah. And it's like, well, if you can believe in a guy that never stepped foot in Israel, lived his whole life in, Europe and then Brooklyn as the Messiah, and he died, and they didn't show him, he didn't come back to life. So if you can believe in that, what's wrong with us believing in Yeshua? So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, perfect. So at the end, I think in chapter 28, you mentioned you have spent 30 years building up Shalom Boca and Boca Raton. And I love the story about how the Lord directed you to start your synagogue, and then all the ordination and the studies you went in to get there. And you have a really thriving community. And I think you've sort of passed maybe the leadership baton to somebody else. And I think you're still doing a lot of leadership. But now you're getting involved with a role called RTF, Restore the Foundations, and you and Gloria are doing that. Tell us a little bit about that. I said a lot just now. Set the record straight, and then let us know.
So to set the record straight, so Gloria and I came down here in 1990 and started the congregation. It was called Eitz Chaim originally. And in 2014, I had to turn over the congregation to a younger man that we had raised up. And prior to that time, both Gloria and I got trained in a ministry called Restoring the Foundations, as you mentioned, RTF, which is a ministry of inner healing and deliverance, biblically based, that has been around since it was about 40 years. And it's really all over the world. And was started by a couple, Chester and Betsy Kilstra, who went to Bible school. They were in their 40s. Chester was literally a rocket scientist, worked for NASA, systems engineer. God called them to go to Bible school. They were in their 40s. They went. While they were there, God downloaded what we call an integrated approach to healing and deliverance. And because he was a systems engineer, he developed it with the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, clearly, into a systematic approach. Because a lot of times, and we did different things over the years in healing and deliverance or whatnot. Some of the things are out there are a little spooky and weird, but this is very systematic, very biblical. And when we go through it, people feel a sense of safety because we're going through steps that have been established that have been proven to work. So we got trained in it. And for the next, from 2014 to 2020, Gloria and I traveled quite a bit. We would do workshops in congregations, churches and Messianic synagogues, as well as minister individually to people and couples that need a ministry as well. And we started going to Israel for 6 to 10 weeks every year, doing seminars all over the country with Arab churches, with Russian-speaking churches, congregations, and Messianic Hebrew. And we had our materials translated. It was amazing. And then 2020 came. And 2020 came, and COVID and everything shut down, of course. We were supposed to go to Israel for 8 weeks, and all that changed. And the young man that we had put in decided to resign at that time. And I came back in as the senior rabbi, which I have been since then as well.
Right.
So 5+ years. And so I'm still leading the congregation at this time. Do have another younger man, training as well. But my wife and I still do the RTF ministry, and we're still available to do it as seminars and congregations. When we go to a congregation and do it, it's a 1 day, about 6 hours. Every participant gets a booklet. We use PowerPoint, and Gloria and I share a lot about our own, because the biggest thing as an RTF minister is you have to get your own healing. And we had to go through some intense healing as well. So to get to a place where we can minister to others effectively. And so I'll just give you a very short thumbnail. RTF consists of 4 areas. The first area, and these are all biblical based, sins of the fathers, we call it, which are generational things that we inherit, sin patterns and so on from our parents and grandparents and so on. Second area is what we call ungodly beliefs, which are lies that we believe about ourselves, about God and others. Third area are soul spirit hurts, which are the hurts, wounds that we have experienced typically in childhood that we carry around still today, that we think that, time heals all wounds, but that's not true. And we do a good job of covering those things up. Then the fourth area is what we call demonic oppression. And those first 3 areas are what we call legal open doors for the enemy to harass us. And once we've addressed those 3 areas and closed up those doors, then the fourth area of demonic oppression, basically deliverance, is much easier once those doors are closed. So that's it in a nutshell.
Wow, that sounds so amazing, and I want to get more information. If somebody wants to reach out to your ministry and maybe schedule something like this, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, the easiest way is to email me. My email is very easy. It's irabrawer@gmail.com. IRABRAWER. It's on the screen there, I think, and at gmail.com. And if you're interested, either to have us come to your congregation for a seminar or individual ministry, reach out and we can talk more about it.
Wow. That's good. I got excited when I was reading the book when we got to this chapter, because I feel like I, like many of us who have come to salvation, we've all have a past and we all have things. And I thought, for me, even with my own marriage, it would be something that could help take us to the next level of the calling, maybe spiritual intimacy and other things. I was like, man, I feel like it'd be great.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So for myself, when I was 11 years old, my parents got divorced. And back then, this is in the early 1960s, divorce in the Jewish world, even in the general public, divorce was not that common. But in the Jewish world, the Orthodox world that we were in, was very uncommon. So there was a lot of shame. I was going to the Orthodox yeshiva, a lot of shame involved. There was a lot of conflict, of course, which typical in a divorce situation, arguing in the house and all that. And so because of that, I lived with I didn't realize it until I went through RTF for myself as an adult, that I carried that shame. And in that fear of conflict for even into ministry, even into my walk with God. But going through RTF really helped me get free of that so that I could be more effective in ministering to others. Gloria, and I don't think she'd mind me sharing that she was sexually abused by a family member, by a grandfather, when she was little. And she carried that around with her. It obviously affected her. And so people think when they have marital issues, oh, it's her fault or it's his fault, or, if we just get some marriage counseling. And marriage counseling can help. But what is more effective, what we found, is this RTF, because it's not what is happening in the marriage. It's what we bring into the marriage. My little boy hurts and her little girl hurts that we bring into the marriage. The shame, the fear, the rejection, the rebellion, all those things that we bring into our marriage, even as followers of Yeshua. And so what we've found for ourselves personally is once we went through it, because even when we minister to a couple, it's mostly individual. So we'll do one couple session at the beginning and one couple session at the end. But in between, they each go through 5 3-hour sessions individually. And then we bring them back together and we help them share with each other what God showed them during their individual sessions and so on. Then we give them homework afterwards, and how to live out this what we call RTF lifestyle. So what we have seen over the years that we've been doing it, we've had couples that were literally on the verge of divorce. In other words, if this didn't work, they were done. And we've seen miracles, God break through and restore that marriage. And we've also had many that, had decent marriages, but they just wanted to have a better marriage. And God comes in and does what he does. So it really is us just setting the table and allowing the Holy Spirit to do what he does. So yeah, and it's a joy for us because when we see what God does, because it's not us, we have the tools, we use the tools, but God, Holy Spirit does it. So
yeah, wow, so good. That's so awesome. I wanted to sort of backtrack one little story I thought was so cool, just because of, as we read your book, we see how God is using every sort of moment to sort of bring you back to him, in all the struggles, that whether it was a car accident or, a business endeavor that failed. And it was just his way of sort of bringing you back. But I thought what was so fun that you mentioned was the story of your daughter and how she does Aliyah. And she spends a little bit of time in the IDF, and, her vision of where she wanted to go, into college right afterwards. But the Lord sort of took that and changed the course. Can you share a little bit about how that story?
Sure. So Gloria and I have 3 children together, and you're talking about Josie. That's our oldest. Okay. And we have another daughter, Mika, and our youngest, Avi. So when Josie, all 3 of them, we homeschooled. And of course, as Messianic believers, a lot of our homeschool was about Israel. And of course, in the congregation, Israel was very, very much prominent. We had taken them on our first, their first trip to Israel as a family and so on. And so Josie, when she was around 17, announced to us that she wanted to make Aliyah. And we were like, okay, I guess it would be hard to say no to that after we've been talking about Israel and, and the importance of Israel and so on. And we have family over there, cousins, actually my mom's first cousins that we had been in touch with over the years as well. And so we said, okay. So she went down. My wife took her to the consulate in Miami, and I had provided her with papers and so on for my Jewishness. And this was obviously before the internet, before they could find out, oh, you're Messianic. No, sorry, you can't come in. So this was like in the early 2000s. So, and they asked her, yeah, you says your dad's Jewish, but your mom's Christian, which you were raised more of? Oh, definitely. I was raised more Jewish, and et cetera, et cetera. So she wasn't able to be listed as a Jewish girl making Aliyah, but she was able to make Aliyah under the law of return. For those that don't understand the difference, is by the law of return allows anyone that has one Jewish grandparent to theoretically, according to the law, to make Aliyah. But if you're going to come as a Jew, you have to show that your mother is Jewish. And of course, in our case, she wasn't, but it was fine. So she was approved to make Aliyah as a immigrant descendant of a Jew, whatever it was called. Right. So she went and was on the first time, and they set her up. She's only 17, been homeschooled, kind of protected, life. So now she's in Israel, and they, as part of her Aliyah, they put her into a kibbutz program with a bunch of, mostly, I guess, at this point, were South American, from Argentina, whatnot. So she didn't understand, she didn't really speak much Hebrew at that point. But anyway, she did fine. And a few months later, she calls us up. And our understanding was, eventually she's going to join the IDF, but she's got to get her Hebrew down. She's got to be established a little more. So one day she calls us up and she says, guess what I did today? What? I signed up for the IDF. What? Okay. That alone gives you a little indication of her personality, right? Pretty much, go get her. And so she's, I think at this point she did turn 18. So she goes in. And, you have some choices depending on, for her, in her case, of course, level of Hebrew. She had, at this point, done some ulpan, which is learning the language. And eventually she signs up to be a Humvee driver on a training post in the Negev. So what that means is for reservists that do their 1 month a year, have to go back to keep up with training. They go to this base, one of many bases, but this one in particular is in the desert, and they go on exercises, combat exercises. And Josie, because she already had a driver's license from being in the States, because in Israel, a lot of times young people don't get their driver's licenses till after the army, if at all. A lot of them don't ever get their license because they take buses and trains around and, don't necessarily need to have a driver's license. It's not like here, kid gets 15, 16, get their learner's permit, get their license, and they're so Josie already had her driver's license. So that gave her the credential to actually become a Humvee driver on the base to drive these reservists on the training around. So that's what she did. And I actually, on one of my trips there back then, went to visit her, and she took me onto the base, got permission. And it was pretty cool to have your daughter in the IDF uniform, Yeah. And so that was pretty cool. So, so she finished her army army time, 2 years. And her plan was to, because you get benefits to go to university and so on. Plan was to do that. However, because she had been homeschooled, the university would not accept her homeschool certificate. She had to have a high school degree or a GED. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, so she worked for a while, and then she was going to come home and try to make some money before she went back to Israel, get her GED and so on. So she came back, got a job, started coming to the congregation. And while she had been in Israel, a young man started coming to the congregation named Nick, who had come and was very involved, and young man, and great young man. And one thing led to another, and before I knew it, they were engaged. Well, it was longer than that, but yeah. And so that they've been married 12 years and 3 children later, and they're still very much serving in the congregation. They're in our leadership team, and I have 3 beautiful grandchildren from them, 11, 9, and 7. And so God, sometimes works in ways that we don't know, but she's not been back to Israel since then.
Yeah, what a tremendous blessing, and again, just seeing how God used what seeming a fork in the road, and it seemed like something that
Absolutely
was against the plan, but it was all for the plan, and
and she's still a go-getter, and she's involved in politics locally as well, and helped a local county commissioner who was a friend of hers who had never run for politics, who ran against an establishment guy, and she helped her win. This was 2 years ago. She was her campaign manager, and she's just a go-getter. She's out there talking to people all the time and sharing. She has her own podcast, actually.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
With a couple other ladies on local politics and stuff. Yeah. So she's great. Her husband is awesome, and So we're glad in a way that we're glad that you didn't go back to Israel.
Yeah. Again, if you guys are finding this conversation entertaining and that you want to read Rabbi Ira's life story, again, it is an atheist, a drug dealer, and a rabbi. It's a really great book. Again, it's a real fun, quick read. This picture of this vehicle here, I think, is the vehicle that you sort of drove to Colorado in. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. It is a representation of that vehicle.
Yeah, it broke down along the way, if according to the story.
So this is 1970. Left Madison, Wisconsin, with an old beat up car, Vauxhall, and broke down 100 miles out in the boonies in Iowa. And we found the guy that had a used car dealership, sold me a 1956 Plymouth station wagon. It was a big boat, and finished. I was with 2 friends, and finished the trip. And so that vehicle is kind of a representation of that journey.
You can get the book on Amazon, or probably log on to Shalom Boca. There's probably a link on his website for it too. But if you're in the United States, I'd say the quickest and easiest way is probably to go on Amazon and grab it.
Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, wherever books are sold.
Yeah, it's a great book. Highly recommend getting it. Encouraging. I think it's fun too, as we connected through Facebook. This is a fun story, but we just one day I get a message from Ira, and it was like, "Hey, we have about 150 people that are in common on our Facebook. Do we know each other?" And it was like, "No, we don't, but we should." And so that was the start of our relationship, and I think if you read the story, that's the way Ira's life is. People come into his life and to change and redirect. I'm really thankful to be a part of your story, and that we get to do this interview together. And I hope one day soon that we get to meet face to face, and I get to shake your hand.
That'd be great. That'd be great, Eric.
Yeah. Rabbi Ira has a great podcast going on too. He invites people into his studio and interviews people. And tell us a little bit about. We have just a few minutes, but I know that you get asked to pray for people who have sicknesses or all sorts of things. But you have a health and wellness podcast too, where you encourage people to get healthier and to improve their own health. And tell us a little bit about.
Well, there's 2 different things. So the podcast that we have, which is on our Shalom Boca YouTube channel, is the podcast is called "Did You Know?" And it's focused mainly on the Jewish background of the New Testament, explaining what a lot of Christians and Jews don't know about the Jewish background of Yeshua, of his disciples, of Rav Shaul, the Apostle Paul. And so and sometimes I have a co-host, sometimes I interview other people. And it's really an outreach of the congregation to reach people that are inquisitive and are not sure about, why, if I'm Jewish, why should I even consider believing in Jesus? So that's that podcast. And then I have my health. What Eric was talking about is I've always been interested and cared about health. And of course, as a follower of Yeshua, we should all, because our bodies are a temple of the Holy Spirit, right? And they're a gift, and we need to take care of them, right? So, back in my hippie days, I'll go back and give you the background a little bit. I got into microbiotics, right? And that was, eating rice and yin yang and very new agey stuff. But it was still this idea that, I want to eat healthy. And then over the years, I was vegan for a while. My wife and I were vegan and tried different things and whatnot. And more recently, I started learning about metabolic health, about insulin resistance, and really just the epidemic of health problems that we have in this country today, which, basically comes down to our food. So I started on a protocol that's really simple with some intermittent fasting, a tea that I drink, and a fiber that I take. And then I just started making videos about it as well. What I've been learning, my health journey is what I call it. To let people know, hey, it's so many diseases are really just a matter of lifestyles, especially like, diabetes, pre-diabetes, heart issues, and things like that. So that's my Facebook, and I'm on TikTok with that as well. So
I love it. I think in the world of prescriptions and just sort of Band-Aids, no one talks about how to bring actual healing. And, you got to make some lifestyle changes. I need to make some lifestyle changes. So I went on and started watching some of the videos, and I'm like sharing it with my wife, and we found it really encouraging. If you're enjoying this show again and you want to get connected with Rabbi Ira, go out to shalomboca.com or just Google his name, and all of his videos will show up, and it'll be really great to get connected. Thank you so much for joining us. This was a great show, and I look forward to some more in the future. Maybe we can get into did you know and kind of understand some of those questions. That'd be great to have you back on the show.
Yeah. Thank you, Eric. I really appreciate this time to be on your show, and I'd love to connect with you somewhere along the way as we, cross paths, maybe at a conference or some point along the way.
Amen. Do you mind closing us with a word of prayer?
No, I'd be happy to. Well, but thank you so much for this connection with Eric. Thank you for the word going forth from his podcast and other opportunities that he has. And I just pray for anyone that might be watching, particularly any Jewish person that happens to come across this podcast today, God, that you would encourage them to really delve into whether Yeshua is in fact the Messiah. Could he be the Messiah, the promised one of Israel? And I just pray for that person. If that's you, I just pray that you would just investigate to know for yourself. Don't necessarily just take the word of others, but delve into the New Testament, even the Hebrew Scriptures, Isaiah 53, Isaiah 9:6, Zechariah 14, so many scriptures about the Messiah. There's only one person that fits that picture, that fits that puzzle. All the puzzle pieces fit together, and he's the picture. It's Yeshua. And so I just thank you, God, for your goodness, for your love, for your mercy. And we thank you and praise you in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you for being on the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you've enjoyed this show, please share it with somebody who needs to hear this message. Shalom, everyone.